weekend, I've been down in South Florida, and I've been working on a photography and videography project that is probably not going to be done for another year. Just totally struck out. It was 2 late, back-to-back rough nights, nothing to show for it. And on top of that, outdoor boys say goodbye to YouTube. It's been a weekend, but then my friend Eliot reached out to me out of the blue and said, hey, conditions on the East Coast are some of the best I've ever seen. Do you want to go diving? I said, you know what? Let's do it. I don't have any plan. I don't have any idea what we're going to see, but that's part of the adventure of it. I hope you guys enjoyed coming along on this sunrise saltwater dive, and I will see you on the water.
I would recommend a wetsuit even though it's going to be pretty warm.
Yeah.
Because I got...
Yeah.
I don't know. Want me to try to pull us over there?
What? Look what I forgot to take out from last video. That's gross. As I jumped in, I was immediately impressed with the visibility. Eliot said it wasn't nearly as good as it had been a few days ago, but this was still some of the best clarity I've experienced along Florida's Atlantic coast. As the sun rose above us, I grabbed a breath and dove down into the blue. The ocean floor was mostly wide open in the area, aside from a single formation. As I moved closer, I could tell it was surrounded by fish. This singular structure had drawn quite the crowd. As I approached, a large angelfish swam out to inspect me before returning to the safety of the rock. The rock itself was encrusted with colorful corals and sponges. It was a peculiar little oasis on the seafloor. Not far off, I noticed what looked like little barrels scattered randomly across the ocean floor. They were sponges. They might look like non-living structures, but these organisms filter food from the water and provide habitat for fish. I peeked down inside to see if anyone was hanging out, but I didn't see anything. We headed off in a different direction and eventually came across a thin line of structure along the bottom. The small ledge looked quite busy from a distance, so I dove down to take a closer look. The thin line of rock was completely covered in an impressive number of coral species. I still have a lot to learn about Florida corals, but I could still tell there were so many different species even in this small area. The most obvious corals, however, were the octocorals. More specifically, the sea rods and the sea fans. The sea rods looked like a plant straight out of a Dr. Seuss book, and it was mesmerizing to watch the morning sunbeams shine through the branches as they waved in the current. The common sea fans also caught my eye. Obviously because they're bright purple. I could stare at this latticed maze for days. There's a bit of sargassum floating on the surface. I was honestly hopeful we'd see some huge mats of it so I could dive beneath them, but it only seemed to wash in bits and pieces today. But of course, as we dove down on the reef, we also saw an abundance of fish. A pair of spot-finned butterfly fish came cruising by over a few scattered sea urchins. Every crack in the reef was like a highway, as fish of all sizes came darting in and out. To be honest, it was a little overwhelming. I'm used to smaller scale stories in freshwater systems, but here I was surrounded by fish I honestly didn't know a lot about. But also, that's kind of awesome, as I basically live for encountering animals I've never seen before. These are smallmouth grunt. I'm pretty sure I've seen them before, but those blue and yellow stripes are sweet. Another type of grunt, a porkfish, was also plentiful along the reef. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know I've encountered a species of grunt related to these guys in a salty Florida spring before. But the contrast between the vibrant yellow, white, and black stripes made these guys pretty fun to watch. Their shape also makes them look like they have an enormous forehead. If you're like me, you probably are thinking porkfish is a weird name for a fish this cool looking. Turns out it's because they make a pig-like grunting sound when they're caught. So you can look cool but still end up with a dumb nickname. Another awesome fish we saw on the reef was this queen parrotfish. Its turquoise scales were stunning in the morning light. These fish have fused teeth which essentially form a beak that it uses to crush coral and scrape algae off underwater structures. A little further on, Eliot pointed out this pair of four-eyed butterfly fish. He noted that he always seems to see them swimming in pairs, which I later was very surprised to find out is due to the fact that these fish mate for life. This is very rare behavior in the fish world. But they stuck super close together as they wandered about the reef, feeding on the various coral formations. That eye spot towards their tail is useful in confusing predators as it distracts from the location of the fish's head. After all, it's better to take a bite to the tail than a bite to the dome. But I followed this fishy couple along for a good while. We then swam through a large school of doctorfish and left behind the bustling reef for the open ocean again. It wasn't too long before I spotted a familiar shape riding along the ocean floor. It was a stingray. I'm pretty sure this is a blunt-nosed stingray. I dove down to get a closer look, upon which it took a closer look at me, and then proceeded to jet off into the blue. Gotta say, it's pretty hard to beat watching a stingray swim. While I was down there, I spotted yet another noteworthy fish, a hogfish. I've talked about them before, but remember these fish are hermaphroditic, in that they all start out as female and then can become male as they mature. This individual is still a young female, and after allowing me to follow her briefly, she quickly darted out of sight. Life may be a little more widespread in the open ocean away from the reefs, but there's no shortage of beauty, and the designs etched in the sands by the rhythmic waves and current are always neat to see. But it was time to head back to the surface and run to one more location to explore. Earlier, I had seen a couple of scattered staghorn corals. Here, however, they basically formed the entirety of the reef. It was like floating above a field of living spikes. Although there was a decent amount of living coral, I couldn't help but notice a significant amount of the staghorn was white and dead. It's encouraging that coral growth is still happening in this ecosystem, but increasing ocean temperatures, disease, and water quality issues all threaten the survival of this sensitive marine ecosystem. In the summer of 2023, Florida saw record ocean temperatures, which led to bleaching events and a significant die-off of coral around the state. Ecosystems have some degree of resilience and are often capable of bouncing back. But what happens when these events become more intense and more frequent? They can't bounce back forever. This area of the reef in particular was still teeming with life, but it's not hard to see what we stand to lose if we allow these ecosystems to collapse. Speaking of warming ocean waters, I was starting to overheat at this point, and unfortunately, so was my camera. So sadly, when this critically endangered sea turtle species showed up, my camera shut down and all I had to film with was my Action 5. So I'm sorry these shots aren't my best, but it's all I managed to get. This is a hawksbill turtle, and it's one of the rarest sea turtle species in Florida. This is my first time actually ever seeing one in the wild. These turtles have a pointed beak like a hawk and almost exclusively eat sponges. It swam in a big circle around me. I was pretty stoked, as you can see, and then continued on its journey. We drifted over another section of reef where large rocky structures like puzzle pieces extended into the distance. I dove down and swam between a few of the larger cracks to see what might be hiding out. I spotted this nurse shark, sadly resting beside a discarded tire. Of course, all the wildlife seemed to pop out right as my camera overheated, but oh well. Not far off, the spiny lobster was poking about in a tiny canyon. I'm always amazed by the colors on these crustaceans. The sea turtle was awesome. I just so annoyed my camera overheated. That's whatever, it happens.
Maybe check it.
It might be what?
Check it again.
Yeah, I will. I'll give it like 5 minutes. Finally, my camera cooled off enough to be usable again, just in time to get a few last shots of the reef. It seems that wherever you look below the surface here in Florida, there's plenty of life to be found and plenty to protect. Yeah.
It worked.
Okay. He tried something else some other people recommended, but it didn't go too well. Low-key devastated. Ran over this perfectly good mango on my way in this morning. It is all splattered all over my tire. Not a bad way to end a rough weekend. Still a little bit sad about my housing overheating right as that sea turtle came up, but oh well, still got to see him with my eyeballs. Also, not bad to get to come back to a mango. I actually have like 8 in my car, so that's awesome. Anyways, that's it for today. Thank you guys for coming along. And as always, I'll see you next time. Nothing like spending all day in the water and then coming back to a fresh piece of fruit. Also, sometimes it's fun just to eat fruit with like no care in the world for how messy it is, you know? This is dripping, running everywhere. I don't care. It's so good. And it doesn't matter because it's delicious. It's falling off my nose. I don't care.